Okay, good morning. We are starting Taf Resh Mem Tet and Hilchas Lulav. Now, as a segue into, we just finished with Esrog, and now we're going to continue into more psulim. So, one interesting topic is Murkav, grafted Esrogim. Now, the truth is, the issue of being grafted, the Mishnah Berurah points out that the poskim say it can't be grafted even by the other of the Daled medium as well, but it's so uncommon that we're only really concerned about grafting having grafted esrogim. What's wrong if they're grafted? So there's three main reasons that are given. One is it's naaseh al yedei avera. So that you don't want to use something that was created through an avera, right, grafting, from two different trees, to use that for the mitzvah. Another one, that was the lavush, the Maharam al-Shkar says it's because it's considered chaser, because it's not completely an esrog, it's got something else in there. And we know chaser is pasal. If that would be the only reason, though, it really should only apply for the first day, but we'll see. We'll get to that very shortly. Now, a third reason that's given is because it's five, now you sort of have five medium and not four. And there's an isser to add on to the daled medium. If it's l'shem the mitzvah, so then you can have an issue about tosif. All right, so those are three of the reasons given. Okay. Now, when it comes to an esrog, so I just want to point out, the Mishnah Berurah brings most of them, but if you look around, there are six main differences, or simanim, between an esrog and a non-esrog, or a lemon. So, one of them, there's three on the outside when you look at the esrog, and three on the inside. So, the three that are on the outside when you look at it, without cutting it open, is the pitum. So the pitum and the chotam and the pitum, the way that all comes together, that's the pitum in particular, that's unique to an esrog. And all the bumps that we're familiar with, that's also unique. And what's also unique is the stem, the oketz, where it grows from onto the tree, it's inset, it's more depressed inside the esrog, as opposed to a lemon, the entire stem completely is on the outside. It protrudes completely. So that's from the outside. And then three simanim from the inside is the skin, the whole peel, the rind, the whole flesh. It's extremely thick in an esrog, as opposed to a lemon. We're all familiar, it's very thin and full of juice. So that's the difference. And another one is the direction of the seeds. So an esrog, typically, it's the same, right? It's an oval shape, the seeds, and so too is an esrog. So the direction, it's the same. It's like parallel. It goes the long way. And it's in the same direction, the seeds and the esrog, as opposed to a lemon. It's usually perpendicular. It lies the other way. And okay, no. So that's basically it. It's I don't know. Okay, that's it. Yeah, that's only two. I don't know. I put down the chotam as one of them, but that's really from the outside. So anyways, I don't know. I guess I wrote that twice by mistake. So I guess I came up with five main differences, and I'm sure you can see them in the picture books. And as far as using them, so it's a question if you're allowed to use them lechatchila, these simanim. So in general, the poskim say not to use the simanim. It's not like the Torah told you, like for kashrus. But the minhag is, generally the psak is, it has to be based on a masora that you know that it's kosher, similar to birds. That's generally the way it's done. Right? These simanim, you don't find them in the Gemara. It's not really, it's more of an afterthought than anything else. And some say one cannot even use it to rely on. I think it's the Mishnah Berurah quotes the Chasam Sofer, for example, but there's others. Okay, but the Mishnah Berurah does say that if you have no choice, at least for the second day and on, maybe you could rely on them. quotes the Bikur Yaakov, who says, well, he cut open lemons and esrogim, and he found that it's not really true. You have some this way and some that way. So it's obviously it's true as a general rule, but not sure. Not sure. Okay. So that pretty much sums that up. Now let's get to Tafresh Mem Tet inside. And here we go. Aleph. Kol arba'ah minim psulim bigazul biganuv. Now, all the daled minim, so it's possible to use it if it's stolen. Now, stolen, what's the problem if it's stolen? It's not yours. The Torah says, "Ulkachtem lachem b'yom rishon." So there's a couple issues over here. It's also in the Gemara.
In this case, ulkachtem, it doesn't mean to steal it.
Right, you can't steal it. You have to purchase it. Exactly. And lachem means you have to own it. Okay? So that's a technical thing. It's a din d'oraisa on the first day. If you don't own it, you didn't do the mitzvah. Okay? And even, well, let's keep reading. We're going to see the two factors that come into play is lachem, which is only on the first day, and the other one that gets a little more confusing is mitzvah ba'avera. You can't perform a mitzvah if it's done through an avera, like mamash at the same time with the same item. Okay, so now let's keep reading. Bein lifnei yeush, bein la'achar yeush. So if it's stolen, it doesn't matter if there's yeush or not. All right, the person gives up and says, "There's no way I'm ever going to get it back. It's gone. Someone took it. I'm not going to find it. I'm not expecting. I'm not looking for it." And there's complete yeush. Even if you have yeush, it's not yours. You can't be yotze through it, and it's not yours. Because when it's stolen, just because it's yeush, that's not enough to make it yours. All right? The Aruch Shulchan points out, though, if you find it, not that you stole it, you find it, and there's yeush, then that's good enough. Okay. Now, so let's keep reading. Aval gazul ukina'o belo siyua hamitzvah kegon gazal lulav v'shipahu kasher. Okay, so we're going to explain this again, but first, how do we read this? So it was stolen, but then you also did a kinyan on it, not at the same time as the mitzvah, such as you stole it, not to do the mitzvah, not at the same time as doing the mitzvah, and then v'shipahu, you did some kind of improvement. You changed it. You did something to it significant that before you did it, it wasn't really a kosher lulav, or the exact how much of a shinoi is a little bit of a question, but it has to be where there's a significant shinoi. Probably it wasn't even called a lulav and it wasn't even kosher. So a simple example could be, let's say by hadassim, you had a lot of berries on it. More berries than leaves, so we learned that's puzzle. But what do you have to do? After it's stolen, then you can take off the berries, and now it's mostly leaves. And so that's a way of doing a shinui maaseh. You're doing a physical act of changing it, or you improved it to now it's kosher, or you cut off the top of the tree, and right now it's not really usable, and then you pluck off the lulav or the hadassim. Like if you uproot it from the ground, nobody would call that hadassim. And then you cut off your little myrtle branches to make hadassim, so then that would probably be considered a proper shinoi. The kanye b'shinoi maaseh, because then you acquire it through shinoi maaseh. Okay, so again, in order to be yotzei the mitzvah, again, obviously, it's not recommended. We don't do geneva, or we don't steal, even to perform the mitzvah. That's 100%. The question is, it was stolen. Are you technically yotzei the mitzvah or not? So if you first stole it, and then afterwards there's shinoi maaseh, then it's yours, even before yeush, because now it's 100% yours. And if anything happens to it, it's not the guy who loses. You still owe the person who you stole it from. Once you steal something and you do a shinoi maaseh, it's 100% yours. Anything happens to it, you owe him money for it now. And so then you could technically, it is considered lachem. But again, below siyua mitzvah is, let's say, at the same time you're stealing it, you also want to lift it up at the same time with that same motion and be yotzei the mitzvah at the same time. That would be a problem could still be a problem because you don't have shinoi maseh, but it's also a problem of a mitzvah ba'avera, because when you're picking it up and you're stealing it, you're using this object to try and be yotzei the mitzvah. That doesn't work. While you're stealing it and you're doing it, a mitzvah is a mitzvah at the same time. That's a mitzvah ba'avera. So it has to be done afterwards. Okay, I think that explains that so far. Now, umihu lo yevarech alav. Okay, so technically you're yotzei the mitzvah deraisa of lifting up the lulav because it's yours at this point, right? It was already stolen and you already did the shinoi. So now, can you say a bracha on it? So obviously, you're not allowed to. That's a separate issue. And really, you're not blessing Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? The famous pasuk, "Ein ela menayetz." It's just it's despicable, and it's just a disgrace to Kadosh Baruch Hu that you're doing a mitzvah through stealing. So you cannot say the bracha. Okay. Now, v'yesh mi she'omer delo nifsal gazul v'ganuv ela laganav v'lagazlan atzmo aval la'acherim kasher b'sha'ar hayamim chutz miyom rishon. Okay, so now what happens if... Okay, so this reads, it's only for the other 7 days. So now it's stolen. The other 7 or 6 days that are left. So then, for the gav to the ganav and the gazlan himself, it's aser all the days because he's the one who stole it, and it still has the shame of mitzvah ba'avera. But for anybody else, it's okay. Because technically, everybody else, it's no longer, it's not like, we don't have to worry about lachem on the other 6 days. And the rest of the days, it's, he's not the one who did the avera of stealing, and it's already done. So therefore, for the acherim, it's allowed to. It's a kula for everybody else. Okay? Now, the Magen Avraham and some others, they disagree, and they say it's even for the individual, it's for everybody. It's asar for the 6 days because if there wasn't a shinoi maseh yet, because it's still an issue of mitzvah ba'avera. So, okay, so it's a machloket achronim, if one can use it, and it's better not to. If it's done, if that's the only thing you have, you can use it and don't say a bracha on it. Okay, that's how that comes out. Now, the Rama reads, "Umishum ze yesh li zar shelo yiktzotz Yisrael be'atzmo echad me'arba aminim shebalulav letzorach lulavo. The karka eina nigzelet." Okay, so this comes from the Gemara. This is obviously not so common nowadays, but if, let's say you want to buy it from a goy, and it was common for a goyim to steal land. So you're going to go buy a lulav from a goy, and he tells you, go ahead, I'm selling it to you, go climb the tree and cut off the lulav for yourself, or go cut off the hadassim, whatever you need. So then so the halacha says, don't cut it yourself. It's a chashash, because it might be that he doesn't even own the lulav. And because karka ain't an nigzelet. Land, you can't steal land. It's metaltalin you can steal, but land, just because he's on the land, it still belongs to the owner. So we're afraid maybe the land is stolen. If the land is stolen, then what happens when you cut it? It says ustam kutim goze karkahim, because we're assuming that the non-Jews they steal land. Viavo b'gzela liyado. So the one who cuts it is the one who's actually doing the gzela, because maybe you're both doing it, but the one who's cutting it is certainly also doing the gzela, because it was never completely owned by the non-Jew. It's still owned by the original owner. Ella yiketetzenu kuti veyikne mehem. So you have to insist that he cuts it off, so that when he cuts it off, he finishes the act of gzela, and then when you buy it from him, it's gzela and shinui reshut. Now it changes ownership. So you can be yotzei through the mitzvah if you have both. If it's, right? Okay. Ve'ein chiluk bazeh bein Eretz Yisrael or chutz la'aretz, and it makes no difference if it's in Eretz Yisrael or chutz la'aretz. It's the same concept, and stealing from goyim and from Jews are both aser. Makes no difference. Okay. Lulav she'agado kuti v'asal kasher komo sukat kuti. Now here, separate halacha. You have your arba minim, and you want to tie them all together, right? The three minim you tie together, and then you put together, you hold together the esrog. So then it's kasher komo sukat kuti. So it's kasher because eged is not as a requirement. It's only noi mitzvah, right? It's just a hitter mitzvah. It's not necessary. So therefore, even if a goy does it, it's kasher. Now, poskim point out, and Magen Avram and others, lachatchila, don't let them tie it together, because who's not mechuyev in the mitzvah shouldn't be the one to do igud, to tie them together. So the Mishnah Berurah points out that applies to women too. Women are pater from the mitzvah, so lachatchila, your wife is not the one who should put it together. All right. And it's not a halacha, it's just a chumrah, he points out. And the main chumrah is by the igud that you put all three together, or at least the first one. But just tying or putting those little rings around the lulav, that's for sure not an issue to have kids or women or anyone, non-Jews, to put those little rings around it. That doesn't accomplish igud, or doesn't accomplish anything. Okay. Bet. V'chein Shaul biyom rishon mishum deba'inan lachem. Now, what if it's Shaul, if it's borrowed? Can you be yotzei on the first day? No, because it's not lachem, it's not yours. Aruch Shulchan adds also, if you're a partner, two of you bought it together, two brothers, two friends, whatever, they bought it together, you're not yotzei on the first day. Because in order to be lachem, it must be 100% yours, ulakachtem, lakicha tama. He also says, he says it has to be 100% yours. So if you're going to buy it together with your sibling or a friend, make sure for the first day you're giving it 100% to each other. Right? It can't be shared. That's maybe less common known. Okay. Now, what about lending it to each other? So the only way to be yotzei, if you want to lend a lulav and esrog to your friend on the first day, is if it's done as a matana. You can have to give it to him as a complete gift. You can do this on Yom Tov, that's not a problem. Even on a matana al-manat lahachzir, you can both give it to each other on a tanai, and that's totally fine on Yom Tov. And that's the only way to be yotzei the mitzvah, because it has to be 100% yours. Now, what if you don't specify? So then the Mishnah Berurah goes back and forth a little bit. If you don't specify it to your friend, because everyone wants their friend to be yotzei, and we're all Talmidei Chachamim, so we all know that the only way to be yotzei is if it's all yours. But he points out not everybody knows that. So if you give it to a friend, you should always specify on the first day, or you're borrowing it from a friend, you're specifying that it's 100% yours, or you're giving it at 100%. It's a full matana al-manat lahachzir, because you don't want to give it away forever. But I mean, whatever. But the main point is you're giving it away. If you're going to just give it to somebody to do the mitzvah, and you don't specify, so it depends. If it's a Talmud Chacham who knows, then he says yotzei, because he knows it has to be a matana. But if a person doesn't know this halacha, which is common, and not everyone knows it or thinks about it, then he says you're probably not yotzei at all. So it's very important, bottom line, to specify. Okay. Haga ve'amudar hana mulavo shel chavero u'melulavo shel atzmo ena yotzei b'yom rishon delo have shelachem. So the source of this one is the Rashba, and you might think either way, but this is the psak, this is the Rashba, and what's brought down the halacha. If a person makes a neder not to benefit from somebody else, so you can't get benefit from him. Now we know mitzvahs lav lehenas nitnu. So you could be yotzei the mitzvah for all the other 6 days. But the first day you can't be yotzei the mitzvah. Why? It has to be yours. And the Rashba points out, you can't make a kinyan to become yours if it's asar behana. It just doesn't work. So that's the reason. Even if he wants to give it to you and you're not trying to get benefit from it, and the mitzvah is not for benefit, but you can't make a kinyan on it. That's the problem. So it's not possible to be lachem on the first day. Okay, but all the other days are okay. Gimel. V'chein shel ir nidachas v'shel Asherah shel Yisrael pasal. Now, if you have a city that needs of avodah zarah that needs to be burnt down, v'shel Asherah, or you have a tree that was used itself as the avodah zarah, that's the tree itself that was served as the avodah zarah. So if it belongs to a Jew, it's pasal. Why? Because these items have no shear. That's the way the halacha phrases it. It has to be burnt. The halacha is there's no way out. Once a Jew, that's right from Yoredeya, once a Jew owns avodah zarah, you can't be, and it's served as avodah zarah, it can't be batel anymore forever. Only a goy has the option to be mevatel avodah zarah. So therefore, since it belongs to a Jew, there's no way out. It has to be burnt, and it has a din of being burnt already, since it needs to be burnt, and therefore it has no physical shear. And we know that we're going to see soon, but the daled minim all have to have a minimum shear, and so therefore it's impossible to be yotzei through the mitzvah. Okay. Okay. Now the Mishnah Berurah just points out, now what about the fruit that grows on this Asherah tree? So if the fruit was there before you served it, before it was treated as a avodah zarah, so then it's mutter for a hedyot, and it's aser, but in other words, for hedyot purposes, for common purposes, but it's aser to use for Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's if you grew it before it was served. Because it's considered maos, it's considered disgusting to use such an object. But something that grew after it was served, in other words, it grew, the first case is it grew before it had the din of an Asherah. Now, if it grew after it has the din of an Asherah, so then you can't even, it's aser for everyone, because it's aser b'anan, it has no, it's as if it's burnt, la halacha, has no shear. Now this psul, now we know that the shear, it has to have a minimum shear, daled minim, for all 7 days. So this is a psul for all 7 days. Okay? Aval shel oved kochavim, but if it belongs to oved kochavim, okay, if it belongs to an oved kochavim, so then lechatchila lo yito, lechatchila you're not allowed to use it, v'imnata yatsa miyom rishon ve'elach delo be'inan lachem. So it's not so the first day, right, it belongs to a non-Jew. If it belonged to a Jew, then it would be aser forever. It would be like it needs to be burnt, and therefore you wouldn't be yotzei at all. But if it's still owned by a non-Jew, it's not yours. So you can't use it for the first day, and the other days, lachetchila, again, it's maos, you shouldn't be using it. And but if it was used, then you can be yotzei. Haga. Okay, now we're talking about the item itself isn't avodah zarah. If the item is takrovet avodah zarah, it was actually used as the sacrifice item for the avodah zarah, so that's also going to be aser forever. Now, haga v'davka shelo nitkaven lizkot bo, right? If it belonged to a non-Jew and you wanted to use it for the mitzvah because you're borrowing it, that's fine for the other 6 days. But you can't pick it up and have a mind that you're acquiring it for yourself, because the minute you pick it up to acquire it, now it belongs to a Jew. And any avodah zarah that's owned by a Jew, there's no way to do bittul on it forever. Well, in mitkaven lizkot bo havele shel Yisrael, the eino yotzei bo. Okay. Right, so that's what we just said. If you have kavanah to pick it up and to own it, and the non-Jew gives it to you, then you can't be yotzei anymore. V'davka kodem shenit batal. Now this is before it was batal. Aval im nitbatal b'yad akuti. But if the non-Jew owned it, and then he was mevatel and say, this is no longer avodah zarah, we'll get into those details later, but basically he annulled it and said it's no longer avodah zarah, afilu mechavein lizkot bo achar kach yotzei b'diavad. So then, when a Jew takes it from him, now it's no longer avodah zarah, so then you're allowed to own it, and it's not a problem. Okay, I think we'll stop.
Thanks.